Two. One. Hi, thank you all so much for joining us for another Facebook Live community conversation this Wednesday. As always, I have a great group of community leaders to share their expertise and experience with you, and I hope you all who are tuning in today will feel comfortable putting your questions in the chat. For a reminder, for those of you who haven't participated before, just below the Facebook video, you can drop questions or comments, and me and my team will be monitoring and try to get to as many of them as possible. We have a bunch of great folks with us today, so I don't want to spend too much time with the background and the details. As you know, we've been trying to stay connected with community, even when we have to stay physically distant. So these Zooms are a great way for us to bring community conversation to you, whether you're on a dog walk or at home on your couch. You can tune in and watch live and participate, or watch later. So thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. I know it's been a long one, and I feel like the weeks are longer than they ever have been before. But without further ado, I'd like to invite my guests to introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Dedra. Who are you and where do you work?
I am Dedra Miller, and I work at Holly Ridge Center in Kitsap County, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much for joining us. Erica, what about you?
I'm Erica Delma, and I'm the development director for Holly Ridge Center, and I'm super grateful to be here on behalf of our agency.
Really happy to have you with us. Sonya, let's go to you.
Yeah, I'm Sonya. I'm lead SLP, that's speech language pathologist at an early intervention agency in Pierce County, and one of a really great dynamic large team of service providers.
Wonderful. Thank you for spending time with us. And let's go to Jay.
Hi, I'm Jay, and I'm the lead physical therapist at the Children's Developmental Services at Hope Sparks.
Wonderful. It's so fantastic to have incredible leaders from our community, from administrative side and from direct services here to share what the experience has been for your agencies and our community members. Holly Ridge has a special place in my heart. My sister Olivia, who many of you have heard about, when she was born with microcephaly in the early 90s, got some early intervention services at Holly Ridge, and that was really where my family had learned so much about the tools and the connections that we might need to build a rich life for Olivia and for our family to have the supports that we needed to support her. And I know a lot of families share those stories. These services that we rely on in the community are hugely important, especially in a time when we're all more isolated than ever. So let's launch into hearing a little more about what you all do. What needs were you responding to, rewinding a little bit, before the pandemic? What were the needs of families that you were engaging with? And then, spoiler, next question will be, how have you adapted to the changing needs since March and the beginning of the pandemic? Does anybody want to jump in?
I'll jump in. So, before the pandemic, we were responding to caregivers of children between the ages of birth to 3 for a variety of developmental needs through an infant mental health informed lens. But since the pandemic, we've really seen just a huge increase in families needing support with basic needs, diapers, housing, that sort of thing.
I can chime in here as well. At Holly Ridge, we were really responding to lots and lots of evaluations and intakes as far as our birth to 3 program, as well as working in the community for supported employment. We do have an adult employment services side of the house. So it was really meeting the needs of all the families in Kitsap County and North Mason, as well as making sure that our community was inclusive and that we were getting those employment opportunities for our adults as well.
And I will add on a little bit to Jay as well. As before the pandemic, the children came through the program, were identified as qualifying, and really the practice is through what we talk about as being a reflective lens. So really holding the value and the full picture of the relationship and the environment and how parents can be the best teachers in their child's life through that parent coaching. And before the pandemic, as you would, because we're home visitors, and so certainly that environment of the home can be really informative of maybe some of the other challenges that they're experiencing. And so since the pandemic, still really responding to that need to keep families engaged, but within this platform, obviously there's lots of challenges there. So holding that relationship dear, being able to explore that through technology has been tricky, but obviously it's the way that we have to be right now.
I think building off of that, we had an experience as well where we were able to, we're super grateful that we were able to pivot rapidly to begin delivering telehealth services. And that in itself was a feat, because in some cases, and you may have experienced this at Hope Sparks as well, that required outfitting our families with necessary tech and access to Wi-Fi. So we've definitely made that remote pivot since COVID. And like Jay mentioned, our families are experiencing basic needs as well: diapers, food, housing, that sort of cash assistance. So it's definitely taking its toll outside of the organization with the individual family as well. So we're trying to support in that area through our family resource coordination and whatnot.
You know, you've talked about a couple of hurdles that you've had to adapt to, you know, pivoting to telehealth and, you know, to technology needs, supporting families. How, you know, have you been working with other organizations or partners, or what kind of ways have you been looking to, you know, provide those extra supports and for families, but also like find the resources within, you know, your organizations and teams to provide those services? And what are some challenges that are still out there that you haven't yet been able to adapt to in this tough, both economy and the pandemic? You know, everything is coming at an intersection. Families are struggling with so many challenges right now, and the barriers to access are sometimes even higher than before.
Emily, you are so right. The challenges got large, and they got large really quickly. The great thing is community partners in Kitsap County really pulled together. There was a pandemic response coalition that formed very quickly. The United Way is a great leader of that effort, along with the Kitsap Community Foundation. And they were pulling together resources and donations, and we were able to benefit from that, you know, right away, and get some funds to buy iPads to get out to families. And then one step further, realizing we've got a lot of people in rural areas without internet access, whether it's cable internet, dial-up, or Wi-Fi. They didn't have it. And that was a really big hurdle that we're still working on, but we've been able to get iPads and mobile Wi-Fi devices into the hands of many of our families who need it. And that was really, really critical. We had private donors that literally gave Erica a call and said, hey, I know that things are getting really hard for families. What do you guys need? And that was like week 1 of the stay-at-home order. That's huge. So having the community really lean in and say, hey, what do the people who are most vulnerable in our community need, and how can we help fill that need, was just inspiring and so exciting to see that. So community partners are just a huge benefit to us here in our county. I'm sure that is similar in Pierce as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been really thankful to have partners with Help Me Grow, Pierce County. They've started a diaper bank that we've been able to connect clients with. Our ACH Elevate Health has also been a strong partner during this time. And then even just the other programs within our organization has really just made all the difference in helping support these families.
There was also a grant in Pierce County to help supply some tech, and it came, and we were able to spend that just fine. So that focus on equity of access at the very beginning, as we moved, felt very urgent and of utmost priority. And so to talk a little bit about some of the hurdles, that the thing that came to mind for me, and maybe this is also just as a member of this community and a mother and the rest of it. And I think that a current hurdle is just some fatigue, and is some Zoom fatigue, and is the complex schedules. There was almost, through the spring and through the summer, but now we are also considering and recognizing that parents have school schedules and other kids on tech and are just tired. And so continuing to be compassionate and flexible and creative in order to continue that engagement. And that's something that, at least with my current caseload and the rest, that I'm really thinking of.
Yeah, that adaptation to technology is sort of a double-sided sword, right? We have, or I don't know, positive and negatives. It's been great to create more accessible spaces for folks who previously had to drive to appointments, or in my case, to come to visit our office or the Capitol. We've now been able to have committees where folks can testify remotely. We're having this meeting right now that folks can tune into, on their own time and without leaving their home. I know from a lot of disability rights advocates that especially that engagement in the legislature is huge. Folks who have depended on, access, transportation, that can't go from one county to another. It's just, they've been facing so many challenges in order to engage with the political process. But, on the other hand, that Zoom fatigue is so real, and we have unequal access to the internet services that we all rely on so much more than ever before. I'm glad that you at Hope Sparks were able to get a grant from Pierce County. I know the State Department of Commerce has been, working on distributing other grants. We've been looking at some targeted investments. We were able to use some federal funding to get money out. The Superintendent of Public Instruction is disseminating some funding, but the need is so much greater than we have currently resources to meet, for families, for businesses, for schools, for every organization. So that's something that we'll definitely continue to work on. I wonder, other areas that I have worked have been, partnering with advocates around eliminating some sub-minimum wage, and to make some progress, or slow progress, on illuminating the challenge with our caseload modeling, or the services that folks get from the state, or like Medicaid waivers, and how people can get those needs met. But we know that the need, again, is so much bigger than the progress we've been able to make. From your organization perspectives, what are the big needs, either for your organization and your families, or system-wide in disability services, what do you see as some of the biggest needs that we need to tackle, this next session or in the next couple of years? What's on your mind?
I personally am worried about the budget cut that is coming towards the Department of Developmental Disabilities. That 15% budget cut is scary for those of us who are in this service area. And really, it's so imperative for people to understand that when budget cuts need to happen, to put those on the backs of the most vulnerable people in society is really wrong. That's not the place to do that. We're already, struggling to make sure that things are equitable, and we're working towards that. Like you said, Senator, it's a work in progress. And why would we want to go backwards? Why do we want to undermine, the ADA? Why do we want to undermine the progress that's been made in the sub-minimum wage issues and sheltered workshops and those kind of things? Real inclusion is extremely important. And right now, adults with disabilities are feeling isolated. Many of them lost their jobs. So usually the unemployment rate for folks with disabilities is much, much higher than those who don't have those barriers. Well, right now, exponential. It's a big deal. So these folks are once again isolated and not part of their communities. And, all of those things that affect everyone, like depression and other mental health challenges, are starting to crop up, and it makes absolute sense. So I really just don't want to see our funding go backwards and our progress go backwards. We need to keep going forward. You also talked about the accessibility of self-advocates being able to contribute to legislative sessions and come to Olympia. I love that we can do that right now in that kind of Zoom arena, and I can see the upcoming advocacy days being really exciting. What I'm hoping doesn't happen is that it discourages people from working against the barriers that do allow folks with differing abilities to come to Olympia and just say, well, you guys have the option of coming by Zoom and making less effort. So I don't want to see that happen. I want to see us still use these tools, but still make those great efforts to make all of it accessible to anyone.
Those are all really important points. I think even those of us who weren't involved in legislative advocacy after the last recession know and are scarred by the cuts that were made to our safety net programs to families who needed the most support. And well, speaking for myself and my caucus mates, I think there are none of us who want to go back to that sort of austerity response to recession. So we are definitely plowing ahead to make sure that we can at least maintain the services that we have. I think there are also places where we need to really think about strategic investment in families that have not had enough support and have not been able to access, the services that they need because maybe they're on the no paid services caseload or any other number of reasons why they have barriers to getting that care. On the accessibility of session front, we don't have an official stance yet, but it's looking like session is going to be remote for every advocate, no matter their ability and physical limitations or zip code or anything. And I will say that I co-chair the Committee on Planning for Aging and Disability Services and Supports with Rep. Theringer. And our committee meeting last week broke every record for remote testimony during the pandemic. We had well over 50 people signed up to testify, and so many self-advocates were able to come and share their stories about the importance of our budget and maintaining the investments that we've made so far. So I have a lot of hope and optimism about what we'll be able to accomplish this session, but also recognize that it is uncharted territory for all of us. You know, as we wrap up, I am wondering, as folks who are really on the front lines of supporting some of the most vulnerable families in our community, either through, you know, your program administration or direct services, how are you taking care of yourselves to continue doing this work? It's a hard time. Like, we all need all kinds of therapy right now. We all need to be sleeping more. We all need a lot of things. But what have you found that's been able to feed you to keep you going in this really, really important work?
I'll just share really quickly because I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I think the most important thing right now is to celebrate all of the wins, no matter what the size is, and to share those wins. So I need my direct service providers to tell me about what went right. That helps me keep going. And the same thing within all of our teams, really leaning on each other, really trying not to just think about how hard things are right now. And they are very hard. There are hard moments, you know, with families and with staff nearly every day. But if we can just take a moment to really sit in the wins, that really helps keep things going.
I think I would echo what you said, Dedra. It just, for me, Senator Randall, I say Emily, it really, really is so motivating from the inside out to know how our families are impacted by our direct service providers. And I get to sit in the nice seat of being able to tell those stories. And so I guess, honestly, it really refuels me and keeps me going to be able to know that, you know, in a way, I'm helping them help the families one by one, and all of those stories just mean so much.
Well, I'm a PT, so I feel like I have to say exercise for my emotional and physical well-being, but also just, you know, just knowing that even in this time of upheaval, we have so much potential to make change for young children and their caregivers, and just inspires me every day.
That's I'm really appreciative at Hope's about our organization with Hope Sparks, keeping the idea of self-care and awareness and taking care of the team and protecting the culture and staying connected has always been, especially in moving to home, has always been part of the culture, but moving to home has really wanted to be intentional there. For staying connected and all of that, I think it's an awareness that there are some bad days and some good days, and just kind of, and being in touch with that. For, as being a provider, being able to see that growth and experience that growth and to really truly coach the parent. So there are actually some interesting pieces about being physically removed. Is, again, our goal is to empower and create an environment where the parent is affecting the therapy. And so to have that actually truly taking place and to see the parents' pride in, or the caregiver's pride in what's happening there is really pretty extraordinary and awesome. So
those are great thoughts to end on. And Sonya, I just wanted to say that my best friend is also an SLP. We've been best friends since kindergarten, and she has told me a similar thing recently, that getting to see the parents in her therapy appointments with her kiddos is changing the way that she's able to connect with families. And I'm just really grateful for all of the work y'all are doing in our community and the support that you're providing to families who are dealing with so much right now. You know, we're all dealing with a lot. This is a tough time, but, you know, speaking as a sibling of, you know, someone with disabilities, and my mom who works in, as a paraeducator in special ed, I just know that the folks whose lives you are touching are so impacted by the work that you do. And just want to say thank you for that, and for continuing to lead with optimism and hope. And I look forward to continuing to work together as we move into this next session and beyond, to make sure that we can provide the support that our communities need. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and thanks folks for watching at home. If you have questions that weren't answered, please feel free to drop them in, and we'll make sure they get to the right person. Have a good night, all.